Okay, so I will talk a little bit about AI, big data, and machine learning and see how they come together. AI initially was trying to find a way to think like human, like a machine trying to think like human. And initially they started with this idea of symbolic approach, but most of the time it didn't work that well. So later on, there were people using some statistical approach to learn the behavior of data and be able to predict what is going to happen based on what we know about our data. I will show you an example. For example, let's think about a group of people, like see if students are going to be successful at the end of semester or not. We gather a bunch of data that are talking about like how many hours they study in the semester and how many hours they spent watching TV or playing games. So clearly, for example, student A spends more hours for studying and less hours for TV. Student B is the opposite. And at the end, if we draw all these students, we might be able to see this line here that is able to say which students is going to be successful if we say these are successful and which are not. So if we have all this data and draw this line, we will be able to predict for the future. Later on, people started realizing, what if our data is more complicated and there are way more parameters to predict? People found that brain is a lot of neurons and each neuron is connected to others, and these connections are eventually making the decisions. If we want to model the same thing, the first layer of neurons, if these are our data, the second layers are some artificial neurons, and we can have multiple layers, and eventually, at the end, one simple classifier, which is binary, yes or no. Each neuron is connected to all other neurons, which, if we keep doing that, we will have millions of possibilities at the end. And having this structure, we will be able to train a system that will be able to say if this student is going to be successful or not. But here we have more number of possibilities. Let's think about an example of cat or not cat. Imagine we have a lot of pictures that are cat and a large number of pictures that are not, and we know that. So we keep feeding this pictures to a computer, a program, and at the end, this multiplication, these are all multiplication, mathematical multiplication, and at the end we find a number between 0 and 1. If it is closer to 1, it's cat, and if it's closer to 0, it's not cat. But since we know if this picture is cat or not, by going through this structure, we can teach the system how to behave here to be able to predict being cat or not. After having millions of pictures and training the system, saying that at the end, what you get, if it is closer to 1, it is cat, and if it's closer to 0, it's not, we can keep tuning the system, and after seeing millions of data, we will be able to predict the image that we don't know if it is cat or not, what it is. So what we can see here is that these systems are huge, and they want large number of data. And to deal with this large number of data, the idea of big data started to show up. big data is how we deal with large number of data, because when we have huge number of data, it's really difficult to handle them, specifically for a computer, because sometimes computer is not strong enough. So there are techniques to find a way to deal with this big data. And that's why it's somehow connected to deep learning, because the way we need to train our system is using large number of data, and this technique has been developed for the last several years to provide information to train this huge data. And clearly, this intersection is finding a way to actually think like human. As I described earlier, AI was not able to predict or behave like human based on initial approaches, but now having this strong structure, we are kind of able to think like human. If I see a picture of cat, I know it's cat because of the number of data I've seen before, and this is the same thing here. Computer has seen a lot of images that make it familiar with this concept of cat or not cat, and based on that, it can decide if this image is cat or not. There are new algorithms, a lot of people are working on different applications of it to find a way to teach computer the behavior of data. And when you learn the behavior of data, you are able to predict what is a new data gonna be like.